Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Dezenghausen. June 29th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. Putin stated that the strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine on Russia are, I quote, an information operation aimed at dividing Russian society and forcing Russia to stop the war. According to him, the West and Ukraine need, even if only briefly, to stop the war in order to halt the victorious advance of Russian troops. Troops at the front. I listened to his speech at the United Russia Congress, then his interview with the propagandist Zarubin, and what I want to say is that he has finally lost touch with reality. That is, he has no idea what's going on at all. He refuses to accept reality. He just says some words, convinces himself of them. Russia is advancing along the entire front. We will fight until the complete liberation of Donbass and Novorossiya. So, in this way, he formulated the ultimate goal as the complete liberation of Donbass and Novorossiya. Well, basically, he includes the entire Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions in Novorossiya. From time to time, he also says that Odessa is part of Novorossiya. What exactly does he intend to liberate completely? It's unclear. He repeated again that he wants it all. 4 regions. He said that certain demands were relayed to him from Ukraine, but he will fight until victory. It's clear that he doesn't intend to stop at the front line, and there was a chance. Russians, as they say, remember this moment, there was a chance. I'm going to show you a video now, one that Russians might rewatch later, and in this video, they will find the answer to the question of why, in the near future, they will completely run out of gasoline, why they won't have bread in the fall, and why prices will skyrocket for them in the near future. The Botox golem denies reality. Also, pay attention to how a vicious grimace is frozen on this ghoul's face, right where normal people have a face. Watch this video.
Есть новые предложения. Предложение о встрече с главой режима в Киеве. Эти предложения известны хорошо. Запрос об остановке боевых действий хотя бы на короткое время по линии боевого соприкосновения. Тоже не новость. Но есть и новые предложения, но некоторые из них я готов назвать. Например, прекращение ударов вглубь территории с обеих сторон, например. И понятно, почему делается это предложение, потому что наши ответные удары вглубь территории Украины гораздо более мощные, чувствительные и, прямо скажем, разрушительные, приводят к действительно серьезным последствиям для киевского режима.
The retaliatory strikes are much more painful. You've been striking Ukraine for 5 years already, while Ukraine only really started hitting Russia a few months ago. And Russia is already facing a fuel crisis. All of Russia is standing in lines for fuel. Crimea is practically cut off. So whose strikes are more painful? But in one thing, the mangy mackerel didn't lie. Russian strikes are indeed more destructive. That's true. If you look at it from the perspective of civilian casualties, that's a fact, unfortunately. That's the only thing the maniac can brag about right now. Today, after the strike on Dnipro, 5 people were killed and 10 wounded. In Zaporizhzhia, 3 people were killed and 7 wounded as a result of a Russian drone attack on a minibus. So in this, it wasn't lying. So he decided to liberate Novorossiya. Now, about the claim that the armed forces strikes on Ukraine are an information operation. For example, how can the physical shutdown of the Moscow oil refinery be considered an information operation? Does anyone even understand what he's babbling about? Does he himself even know what information operations are? Let's look at some statistics to understand where there's actually an information operation and where there isn't. After yesterday's destruction, the oil refinery in Slavyansk-on-Kuban was one of Russia's strategic refineries. The only one left intact and accordingly operating at full capacity is the Omsk refinery. It's far away, so they haven't reached it yet, but they will definitely get to it. And so in terms of gasoline production in Russia, out of the top 11 refineries producing gasoline, only one of them hasn't been hit by drones and missiles. The rest have either been shut down or, well, significantly damaged. The Omsk refinery is still operating at full capacity for now. The others are damaged or shut down. North Sea in Kstovo, almost 5 million tons. The Moscow refinery, 3 million tons. That's just for gasoline. I'm talking specifically about gasoline, not about oil product processing as a whole. Yanos in Yaroslavl, 2.6 million tons. Ryazan 2.2 million tons, Perm 2 million, Kirishi 2 million, Volgograd 1.9 million, Novoufimsky. All of these that I'm listing have either been shut down or significantly damaged. And the numbers I'm mentioning refer to gasoline production. So can you imagine the volume of gasoline that is currently being lost? The Russian Federation is not receiving it. Sizran, Novokubishevsk. This is what is called an information operation. At yesterday's meeting, Putin announced the following measures that have been adopted. Already now, Russia is introducing a ban on the export of gasoline and kerosene. A complete ban on the export of diesel fuel is being considered. That's what he mumbled with his false teeth. A ban on the export of gasoline, kerosene, and diesel is the result of an information operation. I have no other explanation unless there are, different Putin replicants walking around with different agendas. So, one Putin in the evening acknowledges the problem and imposes a ban on the export of gasoline, kerosene, and diesel. Another Putin, literally an hour later yesterday, declares that the attacks on Russia are an information operation. Moreover, yesterday Putin was also handing out some very valuable advice. So what needs to be done in Russia to protect against Ukrainian drones and to prevent a fuel shortage? So they also admit that there is a shortage and that there are drones. Let's listen instead. So according to Putin, what needs to be done to protect against missiles and drones?
Определенный дефицит, но не критический, я сейчас скажу. Здесь есть несколько задач, которые мы должны решить. Мы сейчас с коллегами обсуждали это. Первая задача – это быстро и существенно нарастить производство наиболее востребованных средств ПВО. Постоянно совершенствовать их в соответствии с потребностями в ведении боевых действий, прикрытии соответствующих объектов, с учетом того, что применяется противникам, с учетом того, что им передают из той же Европы новые беспилотные летательные аппараты с новыми технологиями. Все эти средства защиты у нас на самом деле есть.
See how simple it all is. And these means, Putin says, we of course have them. Well, not exactly us, Russians, but he definitely has them at Valdai. And how about this piece of advice? That we need to sharply increase the production of air defense systems. Indeed. How come no one thought of this before? I mean, it's just like, if you asked a little child and they answered, well, you need to produce, say, 500,000 air defense systems, that's what you need tomorrow. And you also need to install 500 million air defense rings to protect us too. And here's some advice on how to avoid a fuel shortage. In my opinion, it's even better. Listen.
Понятно, и что нужно делать для того, чтобы обеспечить нормальное снабжение, избавиться от этого временно возникшего дефицита. Это нужно быстрее выходить из ремонтов, нужно наладить необходимый объем импорта и, как я уже сказал, прикрывать эти объекты надежно. Необходимо также слаживание работы всех уровней и структур, участвующих в отражении атак беспилотных летательных аппаратов.
Exactly. Factories just need to finish repairs faster. Really, why aren't you finishing repairs faster? Maybe Putin can give even better advice. Should we just shoot down 100% of Ukrainian drones and missiles? Is that how we can defeat poverty too? Well, why are you poor? The poor just need to become rich. These are Putin's kinds of advice. Do you even understand what kind of reality he's living in? And the last phrase, of course, the main thing is the safety of Russians. 30,000 Russians are killed and maimed every month. What kind of safety for Russians is he even talking about? And the cherry on top. Yesterday, it turns out Putin was just reading from a teleprompter in that interview with the propagandist Zarubin, so he wasn't actually answering any questions there. He was just like a prop. Zarubin was sitting there, and Putin was reading from a teleprompter that was to the right of Zarubin. And he was reading in such a way that it was obvious he didn't even understand the meaning of what he was reading. I'll show you this fragment now. What did you write there? I don't know, these hacks, these Kremlin propagandists, how did they even edit it like that? And now you'll see that Putin is looking to the right of the propagandist, reading from the teleprompter, and you can even see his nasty, empty little eyes darting around. Watch this video.
Здесь наши войска прорвали трехуровневую линию инженерных заграждений глубиной примерно 400 метров на 4 участках и ведут бои по овладению оборонительным рубежом. На Добропольском направлении тоже произошли очень важные события. На Добропольском направлении наши ребята прорвали хорошо подготовленную, считавшуюся неприступной, трехрядную линию инженерных заграждений. Зашли в примыкающий к Доброполью населенный пункт Анновка, подошли прямо к населенному пункту Доброполья и с севера.
So he can't even speak about the situation on his own. He's either reading from cue cards or from a teleprompter, or someone is prompting him through an earpiece. Why am I showing this so clearly? Putin's detachment from reality, so that the illusion disappears. For those who think that if all the oil refineries are bombed, they'll stop. Putin will say, well, that's it. Now we can't continue the war. How can we without fuel? Poor Russians, there's no fuel at the front either. No, they'll bomb everything. All the refineries will stop working. He'll sit here just the same and say, yes, everything is fine. Everything will be restored quickly. We'll fix everything now. All the factories will be fixed by tomorrow. Let me sign an order right now so that everything starts working again tomorrow. There's no shortage at all. Our boys are crushing everyone at the front, crushing and crushing. Look, I have it written here on my cards. We are crushing everyone. Crushing. But, he's not the first and he won't be the last. History knows plenty of such examples when a dictator became completely detached from reality. For example, before Germany's defeat, before he shot himself in the bunker, Hitler was also actively claiming that the Wehrmacht would soon advance on all fronts, that the offensive was about to begin, and that superweapons would soon appear. He did the same thing. And that Germany would win. Until the very last moment, he kept talking about victory, about how everything was going according to plan. April 20th, 1945, Hitler's birthday, Berlin, already surrounded with only 10 days left before Hitler's suicide, Goebbels publicly declared, let me quote, I am convinced that fate will grant him, that is, Hitler, the laurel wreath of victory. The fact that Germany is still alive is thanks to him. History will never record that in these days the people abandoned their Führer, or the Führer abandoned his people. That is victory. So it's already a complete collapse, and yet Putin is doing exactly the same thing. If it weren't for Putin, Russia would no longer exist. Victory will be ours, and wah, 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 and so on. Even Russian media have started to write some very uncomfortable things. Let me quote the Russian newspaper Kommersant. Prices for all goods in Russia will soon skyrocket as carriers are massively raising delivery costs due to a diesel shortage, Kommersant writes. In general, they write that truck drivers transporting goods are losing time waiting in line at gas stations. Because of this, they manage to drive only 300 to 500 kilometers a day instead of the usual 600 to 700. In addition, transportation costs have already increased by at least 20%. But this is absolutely clear to everyone except for a handful of senile people in the Kremlin. Add to this the fact that the cost of diesel will affect the harvest and the price of that harvest. By the way, I think the Kremlin regime will siphon gasoline from all the regions just to cover up the collapse in the capital. So this kind of chaos in other regions is still ahead, especially with new refineries burning and shutting down. Everyone will be sending everything to Moscow so that no one there feels it, that something bad is happening. Although in Moscow, there are already lines at gas stations and some stations are already closing. Well, here's another statement from Putin. Let me read it. But this is important. The capacities of Russia's largest refineries are being used to the maximum, Putin said at a meeting on ensuring fuel supply to the domestic market. He even held such a meeting. He really thinks Russians are complete idiots. If the capacities are at full, then why has gasoline disappeared? Where? Do you know what else he said? That in July, right now, next month, fuel production should exceed the June figures. The baldy, I just don't know. Who's feeding him these cue cards? Well, how is that? Well, how is that? So tell me, let's solve a really difficult problem. A very difficult problem. In June, just this month, Ukrainian drones knocked out 5 more major Russian oil refineries to a complete halt. So 5 refineries were just taken out. How can a smaller number of refineries produce a greater amount of fuel if, according to Putin, they're already operating at full capacity. How? Well, this is just basic, I don't know, math. And another statement, the West can't defeat Russia on the battlefield, so the West is trying to destabilize the political situation and sow internal discord. You know, he's already worn everyone out with this talk about the West on the battlefield. Which specific Western countries are trying to defeat Russia on the battlefield? Who exactly? France, maybe, the United Kingdom, the USA. Name these countries, Putin. Which specific Western countries are trying to defeat you on the battlefield? After you name these countries specifically, go ahead and attack them. Attack them. After all, they're the ones trying to defeat you. Attack them, take revenge on them. And then there's this. Russia is being tested. They're trying to get rid of it as a global factor that has always stood in the way of evil. They're testing Russia. Remind me, who? Who was testing Russia before February 2022? Europe was buying record amounts of oil from Russia. Putin was at the center of every photo at every summit. Before the annexation of Crimea, who was testing Russia? Watch the video from the parade, May 9th, 2005. Almost all world leaders were at the parade in Moscow. George Bush, Jacques Chirac, leaders of 50 countries, I think, attended at that time, and representatives from 150 countries around the world. It was Putin who decided to test his strength. First Georgia, then Ukraine. But when it comes to Ukraine, the balding Kalosha will break his false teeth. Well, and Ukrainians are performing an incredible feat. Right now, that's the truth. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we are continuing the fundraiser for our air defense forces. The fundraiser is for several command posts for multiple air defense units and the 152nd Separate Brigade. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
152 бригада і підрозділ повітряних сил України та канал Бориса Тізенгаузена починають збір на 2 командні пункти, щоб збивати шахеди над нашими містами і запускати дрони-перехоплювачі. Сума чимала, але тільки разом ми можемо дати ворогу по зубам.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Let's help our air defense forces. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There is Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. If you're watching on another channel, there's always a QR code. Our soldiers in any weather, even in this kind of heat like today, guard our skies and protect us all. So let's help them as well. And in every episode, I say a special thank you for supporting our soldiers. I want to thank you personally and on behalf of the hundreds of our soldiers whom you have already helped. You are simply incredible. Well, the replicants really went wild yesterday. They just couldn't be stopped. Russia can only be a strong and independent power, or there will be no Russia at all, Putin declared at the United Russia Congress. At that moment, Medvedev was falling asleep. This isn't a joke, he was actually sleeping. Or there will be no Russia at all. That option suits us just fine. Why not? Or maybe there will be a Chinese Russia. That's the more likely scenario. He really went off the rails there. I think Russians will really like that. The Russian economy will be brought to a new level. New high-paying jobs will be created, Putin declared. You know, these statements should be read in the voice of any Komsomol member from Soviet movies. Is he feeling unwell or something? By the way, did he even say if the level is right here or over there to a new level, right to the bottom for the Russian economy? Another new level? You've been in power for 25 years. What new level? In 25 years, you haven't brought anything to a new level, and now you've decided to pull Russians out of the slums again, to bring the economy to a new level. Well, just a little more time is needed, Russians. Just give a bit more. It's not quite finished yet. Russia has been ruined. By the way, here, Polish intelligence made a statement that they do not rule out provocations. With the involvement of little green men on NATO's eastern flank, this is what Rzeczpospolita writes about. According to the head of Polish foreign intelligence, Paweł Sot, Russia views Poland and the Baltic states as obstacles to its ambitions and is also working out scenarios for possible escalation. Of course, we know about this. There will definitely be provocations, but the reaction is what matters. That is, the response from our partners should be as tough as possible. Here, I always use Erdoğan and Turkey as an example. So Turkey, they didn't hesitate for a second, immediately shot down the Russian plane that violated their airspace. On November 24th, 2015, a Russian Su-24 aircraft violated Turkish airspace. It penetrated only 2 kilometers and was shot down within 17 seconds. After that, Russia no longer had any desire to violate Turkish airspace. And the Russians lost their nerve. If you act like that, then everything will be fine. Well, Putin also stated that, as it turns out, there were no agreements in Anchorage. Can you imagine he just forgot to inform Lavrov about this because just a couple of days ago there was fear and loathing at the racetrack. Lavrov refused to understand the US statement about the absence of agreements in Anchorage. He was saying, yes, how can that be, Lavrov? Were there agreements? Yes, how can that be? Explain. And then Putin comes out and says there were no agreements at all. There are definitely a few of these replicants running around. Maybe, I don't know, someone forgot to lock the pen in the Kremlin dungeons. They scattered. And so one took off to the United Russia Congress, another for Rubin, got caught, and started reading something from the teleprompter. And this third one says, honestly, I have no idea. I've been sitting there for the last 3 years, haven't seen anything. Well, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and subscribe to this channel. And let's support our air defense forces. It's not easy for our soldiers right now, but they're doing their job very professionally. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.